Hello and welcome to Rules for Better Scientific Posters. This is a professional development course short video from the short video series. I'm Mark Williamson on behalf of Transcend. Let's get started. Imagine this. You're at a scientific conference, the one of your dreams. You've slaved over the research and can finally present it via a poster. You want everyone to know about that great research. But this is the problem. There are hundreds of posters all vying for attention, and coffee break is coming up soon, a distraction for onlookers. You have a couple of seconds at most for your poster to impress upon people. You need to make the most of it. That's why today I'm going to share 4 rules to help you make your poster stand out. We're going to talk about crisp and clear layout, ruthless economy of words, letting good images steal the show, and then making you and your poster a storytelling team. So I will start with my poster here. I presented this last year, small scale radon reduction experiments. It looks okay, but I think using these rules, we can do better. Start with crisp and clear layout. So notes for this, you want to make sure you have good font, clear sections, logical format, and include white space. I did all right with these, but I think I can do better. So taking these notes, this is what I've done with it to update it. So we can see here that the font, I actually made it bigger in places, as well as changing the actual font, and with the white on the background, I actually did shadow, so it actually stands out a little more, it pops out a little more, a little clearer to read. And all the different sections have that same setup. Now, I think the sections were relatively clear before, but some of the color was a little too distracting. I had the 2 different colors. I cut down to simply one to make it crisper and cleaner, and I think that really helped. Again, I think it was already in a logical format, especially making sure the results were front and center, but I'm sure as we move forward, we can do even better. And then white space, I think had pretty good white space between sections, but I realized with my title, there's a lot of unused space. It was actually kind of clunky. That's why I made the title bigger, moved my name and affiliation around, and so I think there's a lot better balance and better use of the space at the top. So this is looking better, and one thing I like about it is that it's not too cluttered because you don't want your slide to be too wordy, which leads us into our second rule, ruthless economy of words. Your poster should not be a word vomit. It should not just be text, text, text. You should really minimize the amount of words so you can actually get across your message without people having to read an entire book to get your research down. So some of the notes for this, certainly use bullet points, trim whatever excess you can do. But the third one is actually you don't want to go too far. You want to avoid anemia. You don't want it to be so stripped down that people can't tell what you did, or use so many, let's say, abbreviations or shortenings so it's no longer very interpretable. So with those in mind, I edited my slide yet again. So I already had bullet points, but I actually cleaned them up a little bit so they're even sort of hopefully easier to read, added some bolding to help that flow. I actually did trim excess in a couple places. I cut down the discussion a little bit, gave me a little space to work with in the future. I actually also cut one of my experiments, one of my images because it was redundant, so could kind of tighten that up. And then to avoid anemia, I realized I didn't actually have a method section. I just sort of had this image, which is great, but I wanted to go back, and so I added back in a nice method section that has design and analysis, so it at least has the gist of what I did, sort of short and clear. So next on, let good images steal the show. You want to have your images stand out, tell a story, etc. So with mine, I already had a lot of images, but I could do better. Here's some notes. Make sure your images are high resolution. Make sure you have good labels. And images are a great focal point. So with that in mind, I edited again, and here's some of the things I did. Now with high resolution, You definitely want to go and check and make sure it's as high resolution as you can so that maybe it looks good on the screen, but then you blow it up to full size, it's blurry. You want to make sure that doesn't happen. Now it's not as relevant here because again, I'm just presenting on a a computer here, but if I was going to do this again, I'd need to make sure at full size these look good. Now with labels, something I did with the results images here, I the labels of like what experiment they were floating on the top actually brought them down, gave them their own box, kind of cleaned that up so it's a little clear, more clearly labeled. I think that looks better. And then at focal point, I had this radon chamber up over here. I realized like the table of my experiment design, that's fine, but we can put it up here and really have this radon chamber, add a border here to make this a focal point of like, oh yeah, these are the radon chambers that I'm using for these experiments, and that's how I got the results. So I think that's a good focal point. Now, of course, I could have done something else too. I could have taken this and put it up at the top and move the introduction methods down. That could be another method that might even work better. So you can certainly play around to see what works best. All right, four. You really don't have a lot of time to hook them, so you want to make sure you and your poster are working together as a storytelling team. You're not doing all the work yourself, or neither are you just letting your poster sort of sit there and hopefully do it for you. So with that, some notes. Remember, your poster is not a script. You should not just be reading off of it. You can reference it, but it is not simply something to read off. And with that, you should really know three or more times more information than the poster does. So you're not just, again, reading off. You have information that you can add when relevant as you're going through the poster. Keeping the core elements on the poster, but then you can expand to the individual preferences or interests of the people who come to your poster. And finally, you need to make sure you're going to hook in seconds. So that's why your poster needs to really stand out to the potential audience's eyes, but then also your hook, your storytelling hook, how you say what you say initially needs to grab their ears as well. And if you work together, you and your poster are going to capture the audience's ears and eyes and keep them interested, keep them wanting to hear about your research. So some of the things I did here didn't need to do too much, but one thing I liked about this that I didn't need to change is that I had a focal point image that wasn't a script that I could talk through. Again, I know 3 times more than what I have out here, so save for the introduction, it's pretty basic, but I can expand upon radon, upon the risk factors, etc. And the one thing I really did do, which was nice with the discussion, I had some extra space here, is I added this take home point in red, kind of by itself, to really get the gist of it at the very end of, oh, this research from the title, you can see that it's about small scale radon reduction experiments. And the take home of doing these little experiments is that low cost and flexible radon reduction is plausible. This research sort of sets the stage for this being a plausible research avenue. So I think that's really helpful. All right, those are our 4 rules. But guess what? I have a little bit of a bonus for you. Graphics without tears, ways to fairly easily add graphics to your poster to make it more interesting, more presentable, more attractive. So you can work with the built-in icons and stock images in PowerPoint. You can learn how to do a quick design of your own graphics, and you can take a cue from artists. So for the first one, again, if you're working in PowerPoint, making a poster in PowerPoint, definitely take advantage of what's already available. They have a bunch of icons. PowerPoint has a bunch of icons available and a bunch of stock pictures available. So you can search icons. Say you want an animal, you can get that icon. You can resize it, recolor it. You can use it to build sort of like a graphical abstract or other things. So it's really helpful to have these crisp, clean little images to play around with. Of course, if you need more full-size images, you can use that in the pictures. Another thing you can do is you can actually design your own graphics. Now, certainly you could get a graphic designer if it's really, high impact and you have the resources, or of course you can have AI do it yourself, or do it for you. But if you want to sort of take creative control, you can invest a little bit in learning some tools. Like for example, there's a free open source software called New Image Manipulation Program, or GIMP. It's like a free open source Photoshop, I learned how to use that, and I can actually make pretty decent images of my own. One of the simplest methods, again, it doesn't take a lot of artistry. So if you take a picture, put it in there, you can actually add layers and you can draw on top of the layer. So I can essentially trace over images like the shark here and then save it as its own image after coloring and adding details. And I can have a pretty good looking cartoon of a shark that I didn't need a lot of artistic, so I didn't need to freehand this. I could use the computer. And that looks pretty good. I did it myself. I have ownership of it. Great. Third thing, you could take a cue from artists of just learning simple things like art theory or things with like as simple as like the color wheel of like if you're going to have different colors on your poster, what colors are complementary or what are sort of opposite, what contrasts well. Doing just a little bit of work into that avenue of art theory could really help your poster stand out, be more pleasing, more interesting. And of course, you could dive in as deeply as you'd want. You can look at balance, you can look at contrast. The sky is really the limit when it comes to incorporating what artists already know about good images with your poster. All right, with that, that is rules for better scientific posters. Thanks for joining me for this short video series. I will see you next time.